and welcome back to another video. You might wonder why I like computers. This video will show how much I like them, but first, I will tell you my origins from this interest. My interest in computers doesn't have an exact date, because I never kept track of it when I was little. But I remember my parents brought home a computer that was running Windows 2000 Professional from a cousin. I used to play games on that computer and enjoyed it. But one day at elementary school, I was in kindergarten and went to the computer room. And we had to open KitPix. I remember enjoying it as a kid since I made a lot of drawings on it. We also played Text of Math Command, which was a math game, and I mostly sucked at it. Also, fun fact, I didn't realize that the game was open source until quite recently. When I used my parents' laptop at home which ran XP, I remember making folders with the name Andrew on it. I still don't know why I did it, probably because I didn't know how to name them properly at the time. Sometime later, I saw my mom on this website called YouTube. I eventually managed to get into it one day, and saw a bunch of videos were available on YouTube at the time, such as Mario videos and Disney channels. So eventually, I stopped using that laptop for a long time because my parents probably disabled my account so I wouldn't access it. Around 2012, my uncle gave me a laptop that ran Windows 7. Initially, it was meant for my grandpa, and my account was a standard user, not administrator. I soon figured out how to give myself admin privileges, since my grandpa's password was in his sticky note. I remember I used to be excited to go to my grandparents, only to use the laptop so I wouldn't nag my parents to enable my account, or enter the password for me to access. But after some time, using this laptop led me to this interest, which is programming. Programming was initially what I wanted to get interested in, because my dad was a programmer analyst for a company. Sometime around 2013, my dad made a website for me, and at the time, I didn't know how to work until a few years later. My first step into programming was I made a batch file. To this day, it's considered basic and not really programming, but at the time, I thought it was and I was into it. Around 2016, I made my first proper website, which was for a school project to learn about basic web development. It was basically making a website about weather. At the time though, I consider it to be my best website. Eventually, I discovered Visual Basic, but I made two simple applications that was an HTML editor and a custom program launcher for other programs I made. Around 2017, I was around Discord when there was a popularity for making bots. I got into it too. The first bot I made was called iBot. At the time, I remember being proud of it, but these days the code base is a bit messy and outdated. Eventually, I got to another programming language, which is C#. I made tons of programs from it, but I ended up scrapping them. These days, my interest in programming is slowly going down in favor of other computer activities. Linux is an interest that's still strong to this day. I remember long ago, my dad installed a distro called Fedora, which was a Linux distribution, but at the time, I thought it was another operating system, and my dad installed it because the laptop itself was slowing down and needed a new fresh install. I don't remember what happened after that, but we didn't use that laptop in the end. My dad also introduced me to another distro, which was Ubuntu. I remember liking it, but at the time, the programs I used wasn't available for Linux, except for the user interface they used at the time, which was Unity. Around 2015 or 2016, I remember getting back to Ubuntu, and decided to do boot, which was running alongside with Windows. At some point though, I switched back to Windows because again, the programs I used weren't available for Linux, and the distro itself would break. There were times I would switch to a distro, then go back to Windows, but that changed in 2018. When I got a new laptop around Christmas of 2016, it had pretty awful hardware, and I didn't know at the time it was pretty bad. It ran on a Celeron processor, which is considered terrible for people who want to do more intensive tasks on the computer these days. And it ran on 4GB of RAM. I remember coping with it at first, but around 2018, I managed to finally fully switch. The first distro I used full time was Arch Linux, which was meant to be hard for beginners, but I managed to get through from a YouTube video. When I was using Arch Linux, I wasn't perfect, nor was the worst. There will be times the system would freeze because of the memory would get full. The games I would play will usually be at worst frames because of the hardware, but I managed to deal with it. Eventually, I decided to get a new computer, but that wasn't cheap. I initially wanted to get a new laptop but at the time I thought I would be getting a worse laptop if I got a new one. So I had an idea to build my own one. I asked in the community I'm in about the computer that I'm planning on building. They suggested pretty good specs, but initially my build I had in mind was pretty expensive. They managed to dwindle it down to a $385 and $53 build. When I chose an operating system, I chose Windows instead of Linux because I wanted to see the hardware capabilities on Windows and plan on having Linux alongside with Windows. But that changed after I ran out of space and some installation problems on Windows that caused me to switch. I still use Linux on this computer to this day. Initially, when I switched to Linux full-time, I was pretty terrible at it, and I didn't know how to use it properly since I was a full-time Windows user then. Eventually, when time passed, I started to have more knowledge about Linux since I use it full-time. I knew how to use a terminal, but a lot of people call that hacking or coding, but in reality it's not. It's a useful tool when using Linux. There are certain things I have done when using Linux, such as learning the basic Unix commands in the process, which is useful when doing tasks on the terminal, going from installing packages from a GUI to installing them on the terminal. I basically had more knowledge on the terminal than ever before on my Linux journey. I also went from a full loaded desktop environment to a minimalistic window manager. So yeah, this is my Linux journey so far, and I hope to learn more on this pretty deep rabbit hole. Fifth, you may not hear about this name before, but it's a project I've been researching and making for quite a while. It is my next passion project that I really want to work on, but at this state right now, it's pretty expensive. So basically, it's an acronym for VM Intensive File Server, and basically the goal of it is to run my computers inside a virtual machine and on a server. It will host all of my smart home services, media streaming services, and tons more. At this stage, Viv is pretty complex to deep in it since I am still researching it. You can see that this video is basically about the hobby that I'm still into and interest is still strong from how long this video is and how much tech I have at home. But I am hoping to get into other types of computer technology such as VR and smart home tech, since I believe in these are the future of tech that we get into, and hopefully they will be cheap and have open standards, but they will not be controlled by big tech. Hope you enjoyed this video, and before I end this video, let me show you some pictures I screenshot during the years.